people want to rejoin. We'll get going again here in a minute. Check, check. Oh wow, that is different. Okay, sorry. Let me adjust this. Check, check. Let's put this at 80%. Checking, check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, check. Sorry about that. Oh, that's maybe a little too high. I jumped all the way up there. Stick this at, Check, check, check. Check. Okay. Is that better? Whew. All right. Cool, thanks. I got to figure out what that issue is. I thought it was just like an intermittent or an oddball issue, but that same thing happened, I think, last time I streamed last Wednesday. So, yeah, sorry about that. I'll figure out what's happening there and fix it all up. All right. So we were just talking about variables. And I was talking about like when would you use a variable? So I was giving the example of sorting algorithms. I was talking about how sorting algorithms as well as other processes can be kind of heavy, right? So you can imagine, let's say there's some list that I have that's fairly large that I want to sort, and I need to use that sorted list in multiple places. So I could either sort the list in place and then use the list as is, but if I wanted to do like the sorted function so I don't lose the original unsorted list if that order was also important, if the original ordering was also important, what I would do is I could save that, I could do the sorting operation once and then just save the result in a variable and then use the variable wherever I want. And since the variable holds data specifically, it doesn't run a process like a function does, it doesn't execute a series of instructions. That whatever instructions need to be executed to calculate the value are executed once the value is calculated, and then the value is saved under the identifier in that variable. So that's the thing. If you're going to do some process multiple times, rather than doing the process multiple times, just save the result in a variable if you need to use that same value, right? If there's a potential that the result would be different and that's meaningful to what you're doing, then you need to just do the process over again. But if you need to use the same value, you can hold it in a variable. So that's basically reusability. That's the kind of the thing that they're talking about here. Cool. Declaring variables, we talked about naming variables. Variables, if you have a variable that has multiple words in the name, like variable name, it is convention to use all lowercase letters and to separate the words with an underscore. Some languages will let you do a dash separating, but Python sees the dash as subtraction, so we can't use a dash in a variable name. We have to use an underscore. Another convention that you might be familiar with is like something like camel case or Pascal case, something like that. Python uses this underscore casing called snake casing, because it looks like a snake slithering on the ground. So it's just, it happens to also, be used in Python, which is named after a snake. So yeah, snake casing is the preferred casing for Python. And then let's see. You want to give, you'll see me do this thing where I'll use a lot of like sort of shorthand in my code, like res and exp instead of result and expectation. LST for list, tup for tuple. And at least with list and tuple, I'm doing that to avoid overriding the type identifiers, which you can actually do. Python will just let you do that, which is kind of unfortunate. But yeah, so in those cases, I like to use just short names just to avoid those. But I also like to use some shorthand, and I generally recommend taking time to give your variables meaningful names. Don't worry if they're super long. Just make sure that your naming conventions are, try to make them as consistent as you possibly can. They don't need to be perfect, but they, a variable name should be descriptive, at least with some context, right? So if there's a convention around calling something like I or X, that I think that's fine. Or if there's, in my own coding, I have conventions around using res and exp, things like that, to make, so it might not be clear what those are, if you're not familiar with the way I code, but, and in my own coding style, I know what those mean. And, I kind of try to do that to show you, like, hey, you can develop your own coding style, and this is what that means and stuff. So it's fine to use full words and do underscore separation, have multiple words. A variable name that's too long is probably better than one that's too short, because maybe it's a lot to type, but at least it's clear what it is. So that's naming. Variable types. So this is kind of, I think, potentially a little tricky, because variables themselves hold data. The data has types. So when we talk about a variable of a given type, what we're saying is a variable that holds data of that type, right? So a variable could be a float because it holds a float data type, or it could be a string because the data type that it holds is a string. So we'll often refer to variables as, when we refer to their type, we're referring to the type of whatever information that they hold. Mutability. So mutability is kind of a tricky idea, I think. We talk about mutability. I'm not sure if this is going to frame mutability as variable mutability or actual mutability. Yeah, so mutability just means we can change the value, right? So variables are, the variables themselves are mutable. So I can say A equals 10, and then print A, And then I can say A equals hello, and then print A. And then I'll get 10 and hello. So this just means that I can change the value of a variable. Of course, we also have the ability to modify the variable according to its current value. So I could say A equals A minus 3. And that'll subtract 3 from A. So A is 10, 10 minus 3 is 7. And then now the new value of A is the old value of A minus 3, which is 7. So A is 7. And this I meant to do this. This ties into this. So let me actually just do it like this. These two lines are exactly the same so far as Python is concerned. This minus equals is actually rewritten in the interpreter as the line above it. So line 93 will be read as line 92. So anytime you have that like operator equals syntax, you can just think, well, it's variable minus the thing, except it has variable name equals in front of it. That's all. Yeah. All right. Looks like we got another question in here. Challenge 3 on this page. Okay, this is on return. I'll write a function called item collector. Okay, write a function called item collector to the following specification. The function parameter called list is a list of items to collect. Okay. The second parameter is called item. Item is an item to be looking for inside the list. The function should return two things: the number of occurrences of the item. Okay, so return. Number of occurrences to me is frequency. We'll call it frequency. And just using none as a placeholder here. Oops. Function should return two things: the number of occurrences of the item and the indices of that item. Okay. Actually, I'll do IDXs like that. And indices is going to be a list. Okay, so the indices where item occurs in list. Cool, we can do that. So let's do something, I should get a good list in here. Maybe I don't care. Maybe I'll just use, I'll just grab a list from up here. All right, I'll just make a list. So let's do a list of So I try to put a bunch of 5s in here so I'd have something to go with. So I've got a list of numbers and I'm looking for 5. 5 is my item. So it looks like, let's just do this. 5 appears at index 1. So I know my result is actually going to be a tuple. And it's going to return, let's see, how many 5s do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 5s. And okay, we'll do this. We'll do 4, and then this is going to be a list of index. It'll be 1, 3, 7, 1 through 7, 1 through 7, 10, I think. Let's just double check that. So 0, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 1, 3, 7, 10. So this is what I should get from this. One thing that I notice is that when I have, so I'm gonna want to do this. I'm gonna want to return the frequencies and the indices. So the frequency and the indices. So one thing that I notice is the frequencies is actually just the length of the indices. So we could calculate this as an integer accumulator starting at 0, or we could just get the length of indices like this. So let's just do 4 element in list. If element equals item, indices dot append, and I actually want to return the or I want to append the index, which I don't have access to yet. So let's do enumerate to give me access to that, and I'll do IDX here, and that should do it. I should see a true. Yep. Okay, good. So true, and I get 4, 1, 3, 7, 10, which was what my expectation was. So this is just one test, and I'm not sure what tests they're doing behind the scenes, but it looks like this will work. I think it'll work. Okay, looks like it works. And let's just check out their solution. So this is creating a list called IDX, which is what I'm calling indices. And then, yeah, this is logically identical. It's the same way of thinking about the problem. It's just some different choices in implementing it. We're still looping through the list. We're getting just the indices. Range len list gives us just the indices. List sub I is the same as saying element. That's going to give me the element at the ith index, which is the same as Ellie up there, equals val. Oh, so this was supposed to be called item. I should maybe go in and fix that, but val item, same difference. And then append and increment, and then return the count and the indices. Count is what I was calling frequency. Something like that. So yeah, it's the same steps really. It's just some different implementation details. All right, cool. Well, sorry about the weird interruption right in the middle of everything there. I'm gonna look into that. It seems like it's an ongoing issue. Hopefully, I can get to the bottom of it. Tovio will be streaming this Wednesday. I'll be streaming again on Friday, so I'll have a whole week at least to figure it out. Hopefully, I'll have it figured out by then. Cool. I think this is a good place to wrap up. We've got 2 minutes left till our usual stop time, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thanks to everybody who brought in a question and interacted. I do appreciate y'all interacting. Bringing in your questions, asking in study halls. I think that's what really brings them alive and makes them fun for me and useful for everybody else. Cool. Y'all have a good rest of your evening, and I'll see you around. Don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out if you have any further questions, if you want mentoring or anything as well. Cool. All right, I'll leave it there. Bye-bye.